Hey there! Welcome to part 3 of my... what is it called? Throne of Eldraine Set review. This one we're going to be covering blue, and if you want to hear more in depth about how I'm evaluating these, check the first video in white. Not white, I didn't do white this one, it was gold, but it was just a few videos ago, and yeah. But generally, I'm recording this for limited, and yeah, specifically draft bulbing notes for concealed if something comes up but yeah. Well, without further ado, let's just hop right into blue for the set. Starting out with Animating Fairy. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 of flying. And it also has the adventure, which, if you haven't watched previous parts, adventures are the one mechanic where if you can cast the adventure side as an instant or sorcery, and when you do, you exile it, and then you can cast the creature, or you can just cast the creature. And the sorcery Bring to Life is target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature and put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. So it's like an animate effect, and we've seen some of these. I will say that this is not a good animate effect. When you think about these kind of effects have been been quite decent. Looking at M15 and Solnithopter, which made you get a 5/5 flyer very early on, just start beating in. The wizard that animated stuff in M19 was good because you had a sky scanner that you could make and again make a 5/5 flyer to have it start beating in. But the fact that it only gives it 4 power and toughness, and it cannot be an existing artifact creature, it has to be a non-creature, is unfortunate. That said, it is just coming on a Windrake, so it's kind of a low opportunity cost where not all blue decks necessarily want just a ton of Windrakes, and it's not a great card, but sometimes you'll have a food or something like a Witching Well that you can target with Bring to Life, and you'll get 2 creatures out of this, and it'll be fine. And when you don't have a target, the fact that you can just have it as a Windrake is just acceptable. So I'm pretty medium on this, but it's not unplayable. I think it's perfectly fine. And maybe the blue-white artifact deck wants it a little bit more, but honestly not that much more. Brazen Borrower. It is 1 white or 1 blue for a 3/1 with flash and flying, and it can only block creatures with flying. And it has an instant adventure, Petty Theft, for 1 and a blue to return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So it's doing a lot of instant speed stuff. It's both a bounce spell and a 3/1 flying flash, and it's just very efficient. It's doing tricky stuff. Unfortunately, if you use the adventure, they see the flash flyer also coming. Not that you're really using this to ambush stuff, but yeah. I mean, it's a mythic. It is pretty good. It's kind of boring as a mythic goes, but it's efficient. It's good. It's just a nice, good green creature. Or not green creature, blue. I cannot say colors tonight, it seems. But yeah, no, it's gonna be so annoying in Simic Flash. Charmed Sleep. It's 1 blue for an aura enchant creature. When Charmed Sleep enters battlefield, tap enchanted creature, and it does not untap during its controller's untap step. I mean, most sleep paralysis effects are usually going to be running you 4 mana or otherwise have a weird condition on it, and this is just a 3 mana one, and that's pretty good. It's not quite a passivism, but it's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more color intense, but this is great. It's good, pretty, mostly unconditional move for blue, and I like that. So I like Charmed Sleep a lot, and it's a pretty high pick. Just going from 4 mana to 3 mana I think is really big over sleep paralysis, and sleep paralysis was always a card you were happy to pick up. One thing to do note is that unlike sleep paralysis, this is not splashable, because it's in N19 you can splash sleep paralysis if you, especially when you're going team or elementals, if you're a basic rule. I'm splashing for Risen Reef, might as well slash for sleep paralysis too, and this one you're not splashing, but for the blue decks it's very welcome. Quarter Monitor. it is 1 and a blue for 1/4. In Winter's Battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. Okay, that ETB effect honestly is not super useful. Like, I'm gonna, like, yeah, like, the turn it comes down, you can give, like, something pseudo-vigilance, but, like, eh. But it is a 2 mana 1/4, and I don't love 2 mana 1/4s. I think they're playable, especially if you're trying to go for a slower deck. They're a lot better than, like, 1/3s. So I think it's, like, fine, and if you are in, like, white, blue, and want to have artifacts and care about having artifacts on the battlefield, this is one that, like, you could do worse. But if I don't care about artifacts, I'd avoid it. And if I do, it's still only kind of like medium, but it's fine if you need those artifact slots. Didn't say please. 1 blue for an instant, counter target spell, and its controller puts top 3 cards of the library into their graveyard. Most cancel variants aren't great. There's a minor mill theme in this, but honestly, don't go for mill. Like, there'll be the time where you can make mill work, and it'll be great. But save that for, like, month 2 of the format when it's a bit stale. If you want to win, don't go for mill. Just don't. Generally, cancels are one of those things where it's like in draft, don't you run cancels. In sealed, it's defendable to run a cancel, and just because people are playing their bombs more and, like, having that response is nice. But you're never really happy to be running these sort of cards. We have our first blue legendary, which is Emery, Lurker of the Lock. 2 and a blue for a 1/2 that costs 1 less for each artifact you control. In Winter's Battlefield, mill the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and you may tap her to choose your artifact in your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. Unless you have specific graveyards, the card cards that you want to be cycling for value by, like, throwing sacrifice, like if you have a bunch of, like, golden eggs, yeah, Emery is decent. But if you don't, she just doesn't do enough. Like, she's a 3 mana 1/2, and, like, maybe if you have a lot of artifact creatures, but, like, she can be cute a lot sometimes, and, like, have some neat things going if you can get those loops going. But you need to have those artifacts things. You don't open an Emery and be like, oh yes, I am drafting artifacts. Just because, like, she is very lackluster in stats and has an effect that can be hard to really abuse. Fae of Wishes, which is 1 and a blue for a 1/4 flyer. And you can pay 1 and a blue and discard 2 cards to return it to his owner's hand. Now, it has 3 and a blue for sorcery, as an adventure. You may choose a non-creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it in your hand. So, on its own, 2 mana 1/4 flying that can protect itself. That said, you're not usually using this to protect yourself, it's mostly to recast the adventure side. Like, 2 mana 1/4 flying, I actually don't hate. Like, those are decent stats on a flyer for 2 mana. But that said, the sorcery side is honestly not super useful. Like, maybe you'll grab, like, one of your sideboard, like, disenchants that you need or something, but it's not great. In limited, you are mostly playing this as a 2 mana 1/4 flying, and even then it's very medium then. So that's about where I'm at on Fae of Wishes. Fairy Vandal, which is 1 and a blue for 1/2 with flash and flying. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+ counter on Fairy Vandal. So, blue-red's theme is drawing multiple cards every turn. So it has a lot of these which have some net triggers when you draw your second card. So obviously you want both these and the things that you will draw cards. This is one that you're in blue, you're probably going to have some card draw stuff, and if you trigger this once, this card is great. I mean, 2 mana 1/2 flash flying is really not terrible, and as soon as you can make it a 2/3, that is just golden. So I very much like Fairy Vandal, even not in that blue-red. Like, if you only have 1 or 2 draw spells in your deck, it's okay, but it's still playable, and it only goes up from there because this thing can grow decently. So yeah, I quite like Fairy Vandal. Folio of Fancies. 1 in a blue for an artifact that says players have no maximum hand size. You pay X and tap it to have each player draw X cards. And you have 2 in blue to have each opponent mill how many cards there are in your hand. So the idea is you have them draw everyone draws a bunch of cards, and then you have them mill them, and you win that way. I don't like this card. Group Hug is fun in Commander, and has some neat applications there, but the thing is that you are helping your opponent, like, reach the thing. And like, the thing is, like, oh yeah, like, I just don't cause them to draw cards and just mill them. But the thing is, as soon as this hits the battlefield, your opponent's just be like, okay, empty my hand. I'm not gonna deal with this. And then it's like, oh, okay, so late game I wanted to mill them. Okay, I'll have them, both players draw 3 cards. And they're like, cool, you just refilled my hand that I've just dumped. Replay a bunch of stuff and kill you that way. It's just that the fact that, you can only do this in kind of like 2-turn intervals makes it just way too kind of janky and slow to really make it work. So I am not high on Folio Fancies whatsoever. So I'm sorry. Frogify. 1 in blue for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue frog creature with base power and toughness 1/1. So essentially Casmina's Transmutation. I do like this a bit better, mostly because this is a format without rampant +1/+1 counters. The problem with Casmina's Transmutation was often like, oh no, you turn my thing into a frog, but it still has 4 +1/+1 counters on it, it still is a 5/5. This one, it will mostly just be dragged into a 1/1. Like, it's not wonderful removal, I still would take that, like, 3-mana sleep paralysis over it any day, but sometimes you have to deal with it, and I'd run the first 1 or 2, but it's not a high pick for me. But if you're desperate for removal, sure. Gadwick, the Wizened, the leader of Castle Ardenvale. He is X blue for a 3/3. And when he's battlefield, draw X cards. And when you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent and opponent controls. This guy is very good. Like, base level, 3-mana 3/3. I mean, that's pretty good for blue. Like, that's very good for blue. And the fact that it's 1 mana, 3/3, draw a card, that's very good. 5 mana, draw 2 cards, get a 3/3. Yep. And it only scales from there. It just scales great with the game. And it is triple blue, so make sure you have your mana's good. You're probably not going to want to splash when you're also playing this. And the fact that you can also just, like, tap down their board and have that board control is just great. Like, there's not much to say. It's like, decent stats, relevant ability, draws you cards. There's not much else to say. Gadwick, good job, Gadwick. Hypnotic Sprite. Blue for a 2/1 with flying. And you may pay 2 and a blue for an adventure, which is an instant with counter target spell of CMC 3 or less. 2 mana 2/1 flyers are fine, and countering a small thing for 3 mana is not good. But the thing is that the 2 mana 2/1 flyer is perfectly fine, and I like those cards, so yeah. I'm mostly playing this for the 2 mana 2/1 flyer, but you know what, sometimes you'll catch a spell that you need to counter or something, and I'm fine with that. So, yeah, I like 2 mana 2/1 flyers. This is a 2 mana 2/1 flyer. Yes. Into the Story. 5 blue for an instant, which costs 3 less to cast if an opponent has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. And you may draw 4 cards. So, 7 blue instant draw 4 cards is expensive, but if you are playing kind of more like controlling game, fine. Like, I'm fine with that. And obviously, 4 mana draw 4 cards is very good. I love that. But as instant speed, it's not bad there. And the thing is that an opponent having 7 or more cards in the graveyard isn't something you have a lot of control over. Like, obviously, the idea is like, oh, you can mill them a little bit, but You don't generally, like, it's not a super supported theme in this, and you're really not going for that in this format. So I think it's like a one-up in kind of like a control deck. It's not bad, but I don't think you can rely on having that cost reduction. It's just something that might be nice and comes up late game. So that's about where I am on with Into the Story. Definitely don't run multiples. The Magic Mirror. 6 blue, blue, blue. So 9 mana. This is the legendary artifact of blue. That's the mythic legendary artifact. And it costs 1 less to cast for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard. Okay, it's very expensive, and its reduction isn't something you're really doing. Like, Spellslinger isn't really an archetype in this format. So it is probably a bit rough. Like, if you're being generous, like 2 creatures, especially since like a lot of the thing we've seen, like a lot of the blue instant sorcery you've been running are actually adventures. And adventures don't count as instant sorceries in their graveyard because they count as creatures. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on it, and then draw a card for each knowledge counter on it. Yeah, I just like feel like it's too expensive. Like, if you have 2 things, like that is still, you're paying 8 mana for this thing, or math is hard, 7 mana for this thing. And honestly, in a long controlling game, that's a liability. Like, you will eventually draw yourself out, and you need a way to close that game. And there are many games where you just keep drawing cards and you just cannot find a way to close out the game. And I just feel it's too expensive, it's too situational. The cost reduction isn't going to happen and be that impactful. And there is that liability in the long game if you are not in a position to close out the game with that card advantage. So I'm honestly not very high on Magic Mirror. Mantle of Tides. 1 blue for 1/2. An equipment that gives +1/+2. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, you can attach it to target creature you control. And it has Equip 3. Equip 3 means, like, you don't want to, but it's fine. And a 1-mana equipment that gives +1/+2 is I'm not super big on that. But it's fine, I guess. So I'm kind of like, if you are in that kind of like, oh, I have lots of loot effects and things like that to like draw my second card and trigger this, yeah, it's fine. It's not bad, but otherwise I don't really want to run this. It's not really super optimal. That said, blue is the color of flyers, and if you have some flyers you can attach to it, and also if you're in the artifact deck, there's worse artifacts you could be running, and yeah, so I think it's just perfectly fine, and that's about where I am at on it. Merfolk's Secret Keeper. It is a 1-mana 0/4 with a sorcery to have target player mill 4 cards. See my prior comments about mill. Don't play this card. Just don't. Midnight Clock. 2 in a blue for an artifact that taps for 1 blue. And you pay 2 in a blue to put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, not just yours, each upkeep, put an hour counter on it. And when the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand into your graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards and exile Midnight Clock. I adore this card. I mean, 3 mana Mana Rock, I'm happy. It's like it produces colored mana. It's getting you there. It helps with Adamant because it is producing colored mana. And that late game, like having a Time Twister. Fun fact, Time Twister is a good card. It may be on the power 9 or something. And honestly, that kind of late game is kind of when you want a Time Twister. And, like, naturally, that'll be 6 turns from now. But, and also, like, by then, hopefully when you're getting close to that, you're like, it's essentially a draw 7 or as close to as possible. And also just prevents you from, like, milling out because it shuffles your graveyard in. That this is just fantastic. And the fact that if you have spare mana to speed it up, if you're like, okay, I've played out my hand, come on now, you can actually speed it up and get to that Time Twister faster, just seems great. Also, the put an hour counter is not a tap ability, so you can use its own mana to do that, which is just a nice little detail. Mirror Maid. 1 blue for an enchantment that enters the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. I think this is fine. Like, in the artifact enchantment deck, if you're not in that like white-blue artifact enchantment, it's not great. But you want things that you are copying, and I could see you bringing it out of the sideboard if you know that your opponent has like some good targets to copy. But unless you know that you will have targets to copy, or your opponent has stuff to copy, and also the stuff that you're copying, make sure it's good stuff. Don't copy, like, don't have like just your bad artifacts and stuff that you're playing, and make it be a good one that you're copying that you'd want to copy. But it's cheap, it's efficient, but it's by no means premium. You already want to be in that deck, don't pick it highly. But yeah, that's about where I'm at on it. Mistford River Turtle, which is a 4-mana 1/5, and whenever it attacks, another target non-human creature cannot be blocked this turn. This is sweet. I really like that. Like, giving something unblockable, and as a 1/5, it's pretty good on defense. Like, it is 4 mana, so like it's a little bit below on the stats, but it can attack pretty safely on its own. And the fact that you can just like sneak in damage like that, I adore. So I do quite like Mistford River Turtle. Like, obviously you'd probably like be careful if you're like paired up if you have lots of humans in your deck, but if you have any number of like fairies and the other stuff, like especially if you're like paired up with green, very nice. I do love it in that deck. Moonlit Scavengers, which is a 6-mana 4/5 that when it enters battlefield, if you control an artifact or enchantment, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Okay, so if you don't have that, it is a 6-mana 4/5, which isn't great, but if you like, it's worse. Like it could be worse. Like, those are like stats that will always be relevant. So if you're not running it, it's not the end of the world. But I would make sure that either I have artifacts and enchantments like I'm in that white-blue deck, or I have food producers like if I'm in black or green. So if you have any of those, I think this is really, if you can consistently trigger this heart card is great. Just like 6 mana, like get a good body, like set their board back, very much like it. But I do want to have a fair few enablers. That's it. This is a great payoff for that artifact and enchantment deck. At common, I should say. Mystical Dispute. It's 2 and a blue for an instant, and it costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue spell. Counter target spell unless its controller plays 3. So it's a mana leak, but it costs 1 more, or it's just 1 blue for a mana leak if it targets a blue spell. And at 3 mana, I don't like the spell. At 1 mana, I don't think it's actually that bad. So I think it's a sideboard against blue, but that's about where I'm gonna keep it. So yeah, just sideboard it in. Don't run a main board. But if your opponent is playing lots of blue, yeah, that's a nice. Listen, I like a very good force spike. Opt. It's 1 blue for an instant. Scry 1, then draw a card. Opt solid. I mean, you're not going to pick it super highly, but you'll run every opt you have in your deck, so it replaces itself, or it gives you selection, it replaces itself cheaply, it's perfectly fine. It's opt. We've known about opt for a while now. I do kind of find it funny though that like opt was printed ages ago in the 90s, and then got reprinted in Nixilon, and now it's just been a staple, and after being not printed for so long, it was actually kind of expensive. Overwhelmed Apprentice. It's 1 blue for 1/2, and when it enters battlefield, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of the library into the graveyard, then you scry 2. You're not playing this for the mill, you're playing it for the 1 mana 1/2 of 1/2 scry 2. And that is sweet. Like, yeah, like if you have like that one spell that got like the Into the Story, like it helps make that cheaper, but a stat switch, but like a cheaper, like what is it, like Sage's Road Denizen? Yeah, I like that. I love this. What a good friend. Absolutely. Adore it. Yeah. Queen of Ice. It's 2 in a blue for a 2/3 that whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature, and it does not untap during its controller's next untap step. And for 1 in the blue, it has an adventure to tap to a creature and may have it not untap during the next untap step. I really like this. It's a great, it's Wall of Frost, but on a creature that can attack. It's very awkward to block. It's very awkward to attack into. It's great for jump blocking, or even just like holding things at bay. It creates a very awkward board state, and it's just great for any sort of like control deck that you're trying to do, like kind of like black, blue, or really any of the blue decks are going to be some controlling. Or even if you're just like trying to kill them with flyers, that this just comes up the ground very easily. So I very much like Queen of Ice as a 3-drop. So yeah. Run away together. 1 in a blue for an instant. Do choose to target creatures controlled by different players. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. You know what? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a little bit expensive for a bounce spell, and I mean, like, not even every deck wants Unsummon, and you're explicitly wanting to have a fair few creatures in your deck that want to be bounced to your hand to replay for value. And I just feel like you need that. If you don't have that, I don't like this card. If you're replaying stuff for value with ETB effects, it's great, but otherwise I could do without Runaway Together. Yeah, sure, you can also use it to like save your creature, but it's like usually the time that you want to bounce your creature and their creature and save your creature is a different timing. So I'm not huge on Runaway Together. It's just very situational when it's going to be very good. Sage of the Falls. It's 4 in a blue for a 2/5, and whenever it or another non-human creature enters battlefield under control, you may draw a card and then you may discard a card. 5 mana 2/5 isn't great stats, but it loots on ETB, which is great for that blue-red draw cards. It's amazing for that. And the fact that it can repeat for any non-human creature, that's nuts. This guy is great. He's one of your like ideal pieces for that blue-red deck, and even not in that deck, it's just gonna be very nice. So I adore Sage of the Falls. Beautiful. So Tiny, which is 1 blue for an aura with flash to enchant creature, and it gets -2/-0, and it gets -6/-0 as long as its controller has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. Again, you're not going to often have your opponent having 7 or more cards in your graveyard. They're trying to make this kind of sub-theme going, but there really aren't that many good enablers. There's that Apprentice that you want to play, and none of the payoffs are really at the point where it's like, yes, I want to be running these things. There's no like Jace's Phantasms that are like really paying off having a little bit of mill. So Tiny is kind of like a combat trick. Like, if you're low on combat tricks, I guess, maybe, or like if you need enchantments, because enchantments are, I think, are a little bit harder to get than artifacts. But otherwise, I'm not huge on it. Because most of the time it's just gonna be -2/-0, and even for the enchantment deck, like, this isn't an enchantment that's gonna be guaranteed to stick around, because if your opponent knows that enchantments are relevant for you, they're gonna chump block with the creature the first chance they get, and they have you lose their enchantment. So I'm not really big on So Tiny. Steel Gaze Griffin. It is a 5 mana 2/4 flying, and if you draw your second card each turn, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it's build your own air elemental, and I think it's fine. I mean, on its own, 5 mana 2/4 flying is fine, and if you have the enablers to make it a 4/4 flyer, that's great, and it's not too bad. So outside of the like draw an extra card, outside of having those looting effects, it's fine. But I don't mind it in that looting effect. But it is 5 drops, and you don't need that many 5 drops in your deck. I think the blue-red draw a second card deck has a lot of the same problems that like blue-red spells has, in that a lot of the deck, like in blue-red spells, the main problem is most of the spells you want to run, other decks are already run, so you're already fighting with every other combination in your colors that like share one of your colors for the instant sorceries that you actually want to run. And I think it's going to be the same thing for like the card draw and the looters, because every deck benefits from card draw and looters, so it may be a little bit harder to really get your enablers for it. Stolen by the Fae. X blue blue. Return target creature with CMC X to its owner's hand, and you make X 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. I think this is great. Notably, like it's a sorcery speed, but the fact that you get a bunch of 1/1 flyers is just very nice. And notably, it is not CMC X or less, so you have to make sure you match the CMC to what it is. And it benefits like hitting big stuff, obviously, but the fact that it just leaves back an army of flyers is very nice. So I really like Stolen by the Fae. Sir Eleonora, the Discerning. 3 blue, blue, blue for a star 4, but its power is equal to the number of cards in your hand. Honestly, in limited, I find that isn't that many. Like, you might have like, at most, they'll probably hover around like the 3 to 4 range. But when she enters battlefield, you draw a card, and it spells that targets Sir Eleonora, costs 2 more to cast. 2 mana, like 3, 4 on average, that like draws a card on enter battlefield, or like a 5 mana 3, 4 that draws a card on enter battlefield, seems fine. And that's about where I am on her. Like, she's fine. She's a knight, but that's not there as relevant in blue. So, yeah, that's about where I'm at. She's fine. Tome Raider. 2 and a blue for a 1/1 flying that enters battlefield, draw a card. It's obviously not as good as Cloud Conceer, but on the other hand, it is also in a format that doesn't have Heart Piercer Bow. But even though it's not as good as Cloud Conceer, like, it's still quite decent, and I would still run every one I draft, because it's relatively cheap, it replaces itself, it's a flyer which is relevant for just getting in damage, so yeah. Turn into a pumpkin. 3 and a blue for an instant, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, draw a card. And it has adamant, if at least 3 blue mana was spent to cast the spell, create a food. So, like I said for adamant, is that are you okay with this card if you don't have adamant? And tacking food on this card really doesn't really change it, so adamant is nice if you have it, if not, eh. Do I want to pay 4 mana for a balance spell even if it draws me a card? I mean, instant speed, it's permanent, which is not super relevant and limited. I usually use bouncing creatures. And at the end of the day, I think it's fine. It's just fine, and nothing too exciting, so yeah, I'll run the first one. Probably not the second one. Yeah. Like, the thing is, like, for like a lot of these bounce effects, you want it to be cheap so you can use it in all situations, but in like the situations most advantageous, and this requires you to hold up a lot of mana to really make it work. Unexplained Vision. 4 and a blue for a sorcery, draw 3 cards. We've seen a lot of these sort of effects, like 5 mana draw 3 cards, and they're perfectly fine. And I like this, but it also has adamant that allows you to, after you draw those 3, scry 3. Like, obviously you really want adamant for this card, but if you don't, it could be worse. I'll run the first 2 and be quite happy about it. And yeah, I think this is real solid. Vantress Gargoyle. 1 and a blue for a 5/4 flyer. It cannot be block attack unless defending prop player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. It cannot block unless you have 4 or more cards in hand. And each player puts the top card of their it can tap to have each player mill 1. This is one I don't mind. That's kind of like this mill effect, but I like it because it's a very efficient creature that benefits from like having your opponent having lots of cards in their graveyard. And early game, you'll be able to block because you're going to have 4 more cards in your hand in the early game. And the fact that every turn, like, okay, it's blocked, now we can, like, mill 1, and eventually come online, makes me really, like, it'll eventually turn itself online and start attacking. And it's very good stats for that. So, I think Vantress Gargoyle is very good. but you're not playing it to mill. You're just using that mill effect to get it online to start attacking as a 5/4 flyer. Vantress Paladin, which is a 3 and a blue for a 2/2 flyer. So 4 mana 2/2, but if you have Adamant, spending at least 3 blue mana, it comes with a ++1 counter. So a 4 mana 3/3. Okay, 4 mana 2/2 is abysmal, and I would not play a 4 mana 2/2 flyer. And so it really requires Adamant, and because it really requires Adamant to even be like passable, makes me not really like Vantress Paladin at all. So I'm gonna say no to Vantress Paladin. You're just like not getting there. Wishful Merfolk. 1 and a blue for a 3/2 of Defender. And you pay 1 and a blue to have it loose Defender become a human until end of turn. So it's like a 2 mana 3/2 that you can pay mana to like actually attack. And I think that's fine. Like, it's a decent stat creature, it blocks well. And for blue, you're not it's aggressively stat for blue, and I mean, yeah, it's annoying, and like when you're like building your board, it can't attack very well, so it's not a super aggressive creature. But it can attack when it needs to, and it gums up the board otherwise, and I don't think that's too bad. Witching Well. 1 blue for an artifact. When it enters battlefield, scry 2. And you pay 3 and a blue, sack it to draw 2 cards. I quite like this, like even outside that artifact deck, which obviously it's good in there, like 1 blue, scry 2, that's fine, and then 3 mana for divination down the road. Like, yeah, I think this is perfectly acceptable, and I quite like it quite a bit. Like smoothing out your early draws, and all that, and yeah, that's it just seems like a real solid like kind of draw spell. So yeah. And that is it for blue in Throne of Eldraine. I gotta say, I'm not as impressed with blue as I was with white. I like white has like nice, lot of very efficient creatures and going, and white was, I think, was a lot more clear in its themes, where blue's themes were a bit less clear. But nonetheless, looks neat, looks interesting, and let me know if you disagree with my evaluation. Remember, don't build mill. It is never the right choice. And yeah. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I'll see you tomorrow for black. Alright, see ya.